The following is a Cartoonerific Studios presentation.
Welcome to Cartoon Fun, it's Cartoonerific. Yeah! It's Cartoonerific. Cartoonerific. It's Cartoonerific. With your host Brian Mitchell.
Well, welcome to Cartoonerific Podcast, classic animated cartoons. I am Brian Mitchell, and I am your host. Today, we're doing part 3 of our interview with storyboard artist, director, really a fine artist, Mr. Barry Caldwell. I'm going to be doing part 3. That's going to be coming up soon. But today we're going to do something a little bit different. We have on Marjorie, who does the Cartoonerific news. Hi, Marjorie. How are you?
Hello, Brian. How are you?
You are looking absolutely terrific today.
Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Hey.
So, reason why we have Marjorie on, she does the Cartoonerific news, and it was actually her suggestion, and I thought it was a great idea because she's done a few shows with us, and the shows have been very well received. People like them, and they go to them, and they listen to them, and they listen to other ones. And so, that's how we're kind of gauging it with the popularity contest.
I don't know if I'm winning the popularity.
But anyway, when you came to me and you said, I think I could do the Cartoonerific news. How do you approach, because you basically do the whole show. I don't really contribute a whole lot to it.
Well, you are very busy, and you're doing your show, and it's a lot of work. So I thought, well, I'm gonna just take this over.
Well,
I like doing it.
I think you're really good at it, and we've gotten a lot of good comments about it.
Thank you.
Like really great comments from the audience.
Thank you.
And so I think we're coming on to the 25th episode of it.
Oh my gosh, 25!
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean they're 4 or 5 minutes.
They're so short.
Yeah.
I try to keep them short.
Right.
Yeah, they're so short. It's just a little something for people who are interested in animation.
Right.
And I enjoy putting it together. I try to put. Sometimes we have some more sort of heavy, serious-minded things like wonderful artists and contributors to the world of animation who have passed, and we like to honor their memory and do a little tribute. And then sometimes it's just super light and silly and fun.
Yeah. Well, I think it's pretty serious business when you talk about these news stories. How do you come up with, sometimes I'll send something over to you, but I'm not, I'll send an idea for like a, part of that podcast, and but generally you're kind of controlling the content on it. So how do you kind of go about doing that?
Well, it really depends from week to week, because sometimes I have just an onslaught of stories that have to do with real heavy hitters like Dreamworks, Disney, Pixar. This is what these guys are up to. Major cartoons and movies that have been recently restored, like Warner Brothers, and other studios that have put a lot of investment into that.
Illumination, I think.
Illumination, exactly. Yeah. The big multi-million-dollar animation projects that are out there, and the movie festivals and the animated film festivals, and Canada and France and elsewhere.
Right.
And those are all very big, but I also like to uncover, and you helped me a lot in this. Like, I learned all about Patrick Smith because he, this viral YouTube animator, he does these magnificent short movies, and they're thoroughly delightful and moving, and they're very enjoyable to watch. And he's just taken off like wildfire, but I would not have known about him had you not kind of thrown that my way. And I like to keep it a mix. I like to do the more mainstream stuff. And then I like to find other things. Like last week, I reported on a 3D animator, Jared Owen,
Right.
who does these very brief educational videos, and they're just delightful and fascinating and educational, and they really just add to what you have, to learn about.
Right.
Expose yourself to.
Right. It's amazing because I've seen you go through this, like the material, and then you're writing all the copy, and then you're performing the thing, and it's a lot of effort. And I appreciate all the effort, and I know everybody out there appreciates it because I've heard from some heavy hitters in the animation business that said, the Cartoonerific news is pretty cool. It's cool to listen to. And, sometimes there's overlap because there are things that get on social media and stuff, but you're kind of uncovering some of the stuff that's not on social media, which is a good thing. But I know it's hard. Some weeks it's really easy for you, and I know some weeks there's a struggle.
Some weeks I do struggle, Brian. I mean, there are some weeks where there's just not a whole heck of a lot to go on and to report on.
Right.
And so I do, but I still try to bring something to, the forefront for our listeners, because I just feel the more you look, the more you learn. And if there's something that you're interested in, and if I can bring that, to your screen or, to your ears,
Right.
then you're enhancing what you're learning that week.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I know the listeners are very happy to hear it. There's as soon as these things are uploaded, it's like there's a bunch of people going right to it. And so that's really a wonderful thing.
I'm very glad to hear that. I don't want people to not want to listen to it.
Well, you have that really sexy, soothing voice. So, I know all the geeks in the audience are just like mesmerized. And I guess I'm one of those geeks. So anyway, Marjorie, stay with us until after the third part of the interview, and we're going to talk about next week's episode because you're going to be featured with me on it. And that should be kind of fun. When is the Cartoonerific news put up on the
Tuesday nights? Every Tuesday night.
What time?
It depends, Brian. It varies from night to night.
Yeah,
from week to week. Excuse me.
Normally between 10 and 11 o'clock, it's up. So anyway, if you can't get it on Tuesday night, you'll have it on Wednesday when you wake up.
Bright and early, waiting for you Wednesday morning. Hot off the press.
Hot off the press.
Yes, I'm very happy to be back here with you. I haven't been a guest on your show for a while, so this is very nice.
Okay, well, you're going to be a guest next week, so that's going to be good too. So anyway, coming up, Mr. Barry Caldwell on the Cartoonerific Podcast. Please stay tuned. Don't go away.
You're listening to the Cartoonerific Podcast, classic animated cartoons with your host animator, Brian Mitchell. And now it's time for our special Cartoonerific guest.
Well, welcome back to the Cartoonerific Podcast. As promised, here is part 3 of our interview with Mr. Barry Caldwell. So please sit back, relax, and enjoy. So you've been doing a lot of feature films since, right? Or have you been
a lot?
Or going back and forth?
Yeah. During that time I did. I spent some time on something that ended up not getting produced. Now that I think about it, there was a movie called Monsters versus Heroes, I believe.
Oh, okay.
And it's kind of a shame that never, actually made it. I mean, we were storyboarding. I think we might have storyboarded the whole thing, but the financing on it just fell through. So that never got made.
Yeah, it's amazing. A lot of the people I've talked to, they tell me that they've worked on things that, it was looking good, and then all of a sudden they just shelved it. It seems like a lot more of that in the 2000s, and I don't know why that is. I don't know if it's just because they look at it and they try to budget it after it's maybe storyboarded, and they realize, oh man, this is going to cost us a fortune.
Uh-huh.
And maybe they just aborted it that. It's easier to abort it when you're in storyboard than when you have the animation going,
Yes.
Yeah. It's live action animation, all that stuff.
See, and you just reminded me that I worked on what was basically a lost project at Disney somewhere around 2007.
And what was that?
This was the Princess Stories.
Oh,
Going to
okay.
be a series of direct-to-DVD,
Yeah.
stories of the princesses in new stories.
Right.
And there were supposed to be like 5 to 7 of these things. And for the most part, we had done, the story work on it.
Right.
And we were beginning to, get animation on these things.
Right.
I did I did 2 stories. I think I did Beauty and the Beast and Jasmine.
Oh, okay.
But mostly what I did, for that project was there was this bridging material between the cartoons. There were 2 cartoons on each DVD, and there was, bridging material starting at the beginning, in between the cartoons, and at the end.
Right.
And that's mostly what I did on that project. But what happened was, and I think while I was there, this was when Disney bought Pixar.
Oh.
And John Lasseter was coming down to become the new sheriff in town.
Right.
And
yeah, he was in charge of a few things. I think he was in charge of the theme parks and Pixar and Disney animation. He's kind of like, heading all that stuff up.
Yeah, John Lasseter had just taken over animation.
Right.
And apparently there were a bunch of, he never really liked the direct-to-video unit anyway.
Right.
But along with him were a bunch of new middle management executives. And the bridging material I was doing was about a little girl in her room with her toys. She was playing. And for some reason, she was always able to call up a fairy godmother.
Oh.
The fairy godmother would show up, bring the toys to life.
Right.
And give some kind of, opening preamble about the stories they were going to see.
Okay.
See the stories. And then, what at the end of it, she'd go, it's like, well, what have you learned? And that was fine. That they were going to do that for like 7 or 8 direct videos. The new middle management people came in and saw what we were doing.
Yeah.
And they looked at all the bridging material, and they said, "Oh, no, we don't like this." Well, why don't you like it? It's like, well, it's just missing that Disney magic.
Oh God.
This is a little girl.
Yeah.
With a fairy godmother bringing her toys to life. How much more Disney magic do you need?
Right.
So they ended up, just sort of amputating that whole thing.
Holy moly.
All of them. Yeah. They just changed their minds about it. They did something else much worse, which was have the princesses' heads appear in these glowing orbs.
Oh.
Talking to the little girl.
I guess that's more magical. Did you work on those, or did you just?
That's more magical than a little girl with fairy godmother and toys brought to life.
That's like Madame
But
Leota.
as it is, I think they only produced like 2 of these DVDs before they just canceled the project outright.
Oh wow, that's crazy.
Yeah,
that's really crazy town. It's like you spend all this money producing them. Might as well go ahead and release them. I'm sure it would have made a mint. But
well, see, thank you, Brian. You just reminded me of another Disney story. Before this,
right,
I worked on what was going to be a Winnie the Pooh Easter special.
Oh, okay.
Thing had been written, boarded out,
Right.
Had the animatic made, did the whole voice track thing.
Right.
They showed it to the middle management people at the time.
Oh boy.
They said, "No, sir, I don't like it.
Wow.
I don't like it so much, we're not even going to do a Winnie the Pooh Easter special."
Wow. Wow.
Speaking of how much money Disney has to waste on things.
Yeah. I'll take that as a loss, Yeah. It's, that seemed like a winner to me. Winnie the Pooh and Easter 2 or whatever.
It seemed fine, but it's like there's just something about it that just rubbed whoever this middle management person was raw.
Yeah, they
just said, "We're not going to do this at all.
You could show.
Never mind not doing this. We're just not going to do anything."
Yeah, it's really weird to me because it's like you're going to take one person or two people's opinion and axe a project just like that, just boom, like that. Make the executive decision. And I'm sure the product would have been very, very good. I'm sure it would have been well animated and
right.
Yeah. It's like it's Winnie the Pooh. It's kind of like, it's like a money machine. You put it out there and it's an ATM machine. It's basically, you kind of stick the card in and out a ton of money comes, So
I'm sure whoever approved that thought that.
Yeah.
It didn't think it was any big risk, but
right.
Apparently somebody didn't like it.
I guess that's where how you get places in Hollywood is you axe projects. I guess that's the way of the world now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, well. What are you going to do?
Well, it's certainly better than trying to come up with something original to these people, because if you sell them on that and it flops, you'll never work in this town again.
Yeah. Yep. It's true.
At least doing a reboot or a reimagining or a sequel, if it doesn't work, they could say, well, it worked before. It's not my fault.
Right. Right. We took the gamble.
Yeah.
Anything?
You approved it.
You worked on a lot of different things for Disney. You worked on the Tigger movie, and
yes, worked on the Tigger movie.
Did you work in house? Did you work in house, or once again freelance? Was that freelanced or
was what freelance?
Tigger movie. Were you working in house on that, or
no? I was working in house for that.
Right, and so
working in house for that. Something else I worked on for Disney that I just remembered, but I haven't put it as part of my resume. There was a series they had done for Disney China.
Oh,
that I had done 3 or 4 shorts for.
Right. Oh, is that like a Disney Channel?
About, well, you know how in front of a lot of Asian homes there are like these guardian animals, these stone statues.
Okay.
These 2 statues came to life when no one was looking.
Okay.
And went on little adventures.
Wow.
And when someone was looking, they ran back to their posts in front of the front door.
Wow.
So I did like 3 or 4 of those.
Right. Were they fun to work on, or? They
were fun.
Yeah.
They were entertaining because they were all pantomime.
Right.
There was some dialogue, but not much.
Right. Interesting.
I've done that.
Right. When was the last time you worked for Disney? That was
technically. Mm-hmm. Let's see. When was the last time I worked for Disney? The last time I worked for Disney, outright, was working on the 7D.
Oh, that's right. You worked with Tom Ruger again on that.
With Tom Ruger again. Were
you directing on that, or just doing storyboards?
Just doing storyboards.
Storyboards is basically directing anyway. That's the way I feel. As
I thought about it, it's like, doing storyboards is the first director to any project.
That's right. You're really controlling the cartoon, and you're influencing design of everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's a good place to be.
Yeah.
When you storyboard something that comes back and basically no changes or maybe a minor change, and it's kind of satisfying. It's especially satisfying when it comes back and it plays and it kills.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Charles Visser and Alfred Jimeno were directing on that show.
Right. They're superior directors. They know what they're doing.
Yeah.
Alfred's incredibly talented. Charles is too. And
Yeah, which is why Tom brought them back.
yeah.
Actually, that was a very strange experience for me, because working on the 70 and at Disney at that time,
Mm-hmm.
it was like there were representatives from one end of my career to the other on that floor.
Right.
There were people from Filmation working on the other side of the building. Anyway, yeah, there were people
Mm-hmm.
that I had worked with at Filmation
Right.
working on that show, to people who I had worked with at Ruby Spears,
Mm-hmm.
to people I had worked with, the Animaniacs folks getting the band back together for that, right down to the last job I had had before going to the 70, which was at Dreamworks.
Right.
And my cubicle mate was also working on the show. So it's like there were representatives from one end of my career to the other on the same floor of the building.
You were working in-house on that, right? You were in-house. Did it feel like it was the Warner Brothers crew working at Disney? Or did it have that feel because Ruger and Visser and Alfred Gimeno and all these people? Did you feel like
there were a lot of people who were new to working with Tom Ruger, but for me, yes, it felt like.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And there were other people that I had also worked with, and who sort of came in and out during the Animaniacs years that got in on this too. So it was very comfortable.
Wow, that was like you were working on for what, 2 or 3 years? On that show?
It was 1 year.
Oh, okay.
No, it was, oh, good grief, no. Getting it right. Yeah, it was 2 years.
Yeah.
It was 2 years.
So was that, I would take it would be a lot of fun to work on that show.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah. So what would you say would be the highlight of your career? Because I know right now the animation industry is in the doldrums.
Yes.
And we were talking about this before we started doing the podcast, and we're trying to figure out, what is the main culprit here? And you mentioned you thought it was probably streaming, and the
miscalculation about it.
Yeah. I think the promise of, I think everybody looked at Netflix and they felt like, oh, well, we'll have all this money to put to all these different projects and we're going to be very successful. But the factor that I think they kind of left out was the fact that Netflix was kind of its own thing. It was one streaming service and there weren't a whole lot of other streaming services out there. Now everybody has a streaming service. I mean, I think my next door neighbor has a streaming service. I mean, it's like podcasts. It used to be a few, and now everybody has a podcast now. And a lot of them aren't very good, but the point is like with the streaming, I think they expected to dominate the market and streaming. And they would have oodles of money, and they offered, they tried to get in fast and cheap to get all these people in, and they got all these people in, and they were kind of locked in at a price, and then those people didn't stay, and they, so I think there were a lot of problems there. Plus, everybody else, like I said, Discovery Channel has a streaming service. Warner Brothers has a streaming service. I think even CNN tried a streaming service, and I think I don't know if that's still existing, but you look all the way around, and it's just like everybody has a streaming service, and I think it's been a big miscalculation. And now
they all abandoned cable television for this, and it's like they're discovering how much of a mistake it ended up being, and it's like, and now they're bundling back up again,
right? Yeah, they're trying to, I know Disney is trying to have, they're actually reaching out to other companies to try to bring them in to a streaming package.
Yeah.
So until they figure that out, I think a lot of things are going to be in limbo. But eventually they have to come back to animation. Animation, I think with Netflix, some of their highest rated stuff on Netflix is animation. And so I think they're all going to kind of realize it and come back to it. I think it's I know it's a 3-year lull. I know it's been kind of going down, but I think there's going to be a point where it's going to bottom out, and it's going to, all of a sudden, all these things are going to get greenlit again. And because things cycle anyway, these businesses cycle. So I think it's going to come back. I think it's going to come back stronger than ever. But I'm being optimistic.
Yeah, I hope that happens. I do, but just sort of based on the history of how these studios deal with animation.
Yeah.
They still don't really think of it as, real television or real movie making.
Yeah.
So,
it's kind of sad. It's kind of sad that they don't have that the vision. And I think even with Disney, I think they're going down the wrong direction. I think they're definitely not going in the right direction. I think they're abandoning some things that made their animation so popular. And I think their last couple of feature films, even before the last one, Wish, came out. I wasn't a big fan of Encanto. As a matter of fact, I watched it, and it was just like, big deal, And I'm sorry, because I know a lot of talented people worked on it, and some of those people might be listening to this podcast right now. But I feel like the last 2 or 3 feature films that have come out, I've kind of shrugged my shoulders at. I think there's a lot of sameness going on in the business, and I think the creativity isn't being pushed, and that's animation's strength is the creativity. So that's my 2 cents anyway.
Yeah, I don't think anybody's blaming the artist for this, and it's like I don't think anybody ever blames the artist. It's
Right.
like it's the studio people. It's like, and I heard a writer who worked on a movie that did not turn out particularly well. That he said, "Look, I wanted to do something different, but what you get is the movie the studio wants to pay for."
Right. And that happens a lot.
Yeah.
And it's been happening for years. It's not a recent development.
Yeah. People just seem to forget.
Yeah. I know.
It's like, crappy writers, terrible directors.
Well,
no,
it's like
you get the movie the studio wants to pay for.
That's right. It's kind of like, there's a very funny scene in a movie called Uncle Buck, and it's a drunk clown walks up to the front door, and John Candy opens the door, and the clown's there for a birthday party. And basically he punches the clown out because he's drunk and he's belligerent, and it's a lot of different things going on there. Yeah. And it's and he pulls back and he just punches him in the nose, and the clown basically goes back like one of those bouncy clowns where you'd punch it in the nose and it would kind of like rock back, and then come back up. And it's a very funny scene in the movie. And if I had brought that to somebody and showed it to them and they didn't like clowns, that would have been axed. So, yeah. And that's what happens. So, anyway, it's unfortunate. I always say, you hire the creatives, let them do what they do best, which is create. And trust their instincts, because they're not right 100% of the time. Maybe they can be. But most of the time, what you're going to get is something really good. And whether that clicks with the public or not is not important, really. But don't let the executives come in and dictate how you make that movie or that cartoon or that television show. Let the creatives do what they do best. And like you, with your years of experience doing this, and obviously doing it very, very well, they need to trust people like you to deliver the product.
Yeah, that's, when you you hit the subject square on the head as far as why this doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Trust the creatives. That is the last thing these guys want to do.
Right.
Nothing terrifies them more than trusting somebody who does what they don't understand to do what they do.
Right.
Didn't used to be that way, actually, from what I heard. I remember an interview with Frank Zappa talking about music industry executives.
Mm-hmm.
That these guys didn't know what was going on. They didn't know what was hot. They didn't know what was good. They just figured, well, this seems kind of reasonable. Let's just see what happens.
They would have,
if it worked, it worked.
Yeah, they would have a musical producer come in, and he was in charge of that band, and they were creating that sound, and he was making the decisions on what songs would go on a record, and bring in other musicians to kind of collaborate. And then they would produce an album, and here it is. Here it is. Release it. This is it, right? I know nothing of the music business, but ideally that's...
Well, it's all similar. It's all similar.
I can imagine.
What you're describing, what you're describing is the last generation of people doing this stuff. It's like, I remember what Zappa said was, that was the old guys. The new guys all think they know better than everybody else.
Right.
And they come in and they want to run everything because they think they know everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
They know better than everybody else.
Right.
And that's definitely what we have with these people running studios now.
That's it. Chuck Jones used to complain about this guy, Leon Schlesinger.
Yes.
And Schlesinger didn't pay them very well. He didn't pay those guys on the Looney Tunes very well. But what he did offer was the creative freedom to do what they wanted. And basically, as long as they delivered a 6-minute cartoon and it was funny, he didn't care. He had
what they did or how they did it.
Yeah. And so that's a smart man right there. And the same thing with Fred Quimby over at MGM. Basically,
I was about to ask that. Fred Quimby was like that.
Yeah. Fred Quimby was basically, he didn't understand cartoons. He basically didn't care. Just produce something that's going to go out there and it's going to make people laugh.
Yeah.
And that's what happened. And they
just don't lose us any money.
Exactly. Don't lose us money. Make us money. And that's what they did. So, hey, Barry, you working on anything now, or what are you doing now?
No, I am not. And in fact, considering what's been going on for the last 2 years, I am semi-retired.
Okay. Well,
if something else can come along that, is interesting and wants me, I can do it. But, I'll do that. But
let me
there
tell
are people half my age still looking for work. So
let me tell you, any project that comes along where I need a storyboard artist or director, basically you're my man. You're my man. Talented guy. Anyway, thank you. Barry, thank you so much for coming on here. And wish you, I wish that you enjoy this wonderful weekend. It's yes. Anyway,
I intend to.
Okay. Well, thank you again. We'll stay in touch. All right.
Okay, I certainly will. Thank you, Brian.
All right. Take care. Okay.
You too.
All right.
Do you have any questions or comments about the podcast? Please email Brian at cartoonerific.com. Your email may be featured in one of our future shows.
Well, thank you, Barry, for doing that wonderful interview. And like I've said, if you tuned into this episode and you didn't listen to parts 1 and 2, they're both uploaded. Please go back and listen to those. Marjorie.
Hello.
We're gonna talk about a show we're gonna do next week. And it's going to be kind of we're veering off into a different direction here on the Cartoonerific Podcast, because we're going to be talking about
animated opening sequences to live action films.
That should be a lot of fun, because there's a lot of these really wonderful animated openings. And offhand, I could think of, Disney did a bunch of them for the Shaggy Dog, which was stop motion animation. And I'm sorry, I'm rocking the boat here. You can hear my microphone kind of knocking around here. But Disney did a bunch. Universal did a bunch. All these different studios did all these wonderful animated openings. So, and off the top of my head, It's a Mad, 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 Mad World had an animated opening. W.C. Fields' film, I think, You Never Give a Sucker an Even Break, had a little bit of an animated opening, and but a lot of Disney films, and then the Pink Panther series had a bunch of wonderful animated openings, and there's others too. So we're going to be talking about that.
Well, actually, I remember it was a couple of years ago, and I said to you, I would really love to do a show about these animated opening sequences because I fell in love with a show called Only Murders in the Building, and I absolutely love I love the colors, I love everything that's going on, and it kind of threw me back to this show that I used to watch on like Masterpiece Theater or something, or PBS. It was Murder.
Oh, it was Suspense.
Mystery. Oh, Suspense.
I believe it was Suspense, and it was an animated opening by Richard Gorey.
Yes.
Yes.
And I loved it.
Yeah. Well, we're going to be talking about all that. I always started asking you about what is the Pink Panther, because those who haven't heard any of my episodes thus far with Brian, I am the newbie to the world of animation. So all this stuff is new to me. And I never knew what the heck the Pink Panther was. And you explained, well, it's not an animated movie. It's a live action movie. But they gave it this animated opening sequence. Right. And then the Pink Panther became a star. Okay, and then we're going to talk about that next week, because a lot of people think that the Pink Panther is just it's an animated character of the Panther, Pink Panther, and but it's basically, there's more to it, and we'll talk about that on next week's show. So it's going to be a fun show. Please come back for that, and thank you for Marjorie for coming on today.
This was fun.
It is fun. Anyway,
I look forward to discussing that with you next time.
Me too. I'm looking forward. I think a lot of people are going to be looking forward to this episode. So thank you.
Thank you.
Anyway, if you haven't subscribed to the podcast yet, please do so. Go to your favorite service and click on that subscribe button so that every time a brand new episode is uploaded for your listening pleasure, you'll be able to be the first one on your block to enjoy it. Also, tell a friend. Go and call them up, ring them up, say, hey, I really like this show, the Cartoonerific Podcast. Let them know about us. And you can actually let them know if you have a Facebook page, you can go to our Facebook page and share one of the episodes to them. I'm sure they would really appreciate it. Anyway, next week is going to be a fun show. And like I said, Marjorie will be back for that. So we'll see you all again next time on the Cartoonerific Podcast. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.
This has been a Cartoonerific Studios presentation.
The Cartoonerific Podcast is copyright 2024 by Cartoonerific Studios Incorporated. All rights reserved.